pause it and start it again after our break. Welcome to the March edition of the Santa Rosa Do Tell Story Swap. I am Brandon, the MC for this event. We have Katie and Meg, our co-chairs, who organized this entire event. And we have our original founder with us tonight, Elaine Stanley. So welcome, Elaine. It's always a pleasure to have you. That was probably 12 years ago, maybe longer, huh?
Maybe longer, yeah.
Maybe longer. Yeah, it's hard to.
I think it was 2010.
It's like the gas prices, it just keeps going up.
Right.
So 12, 13 years pretty soon. So I'm very pleased to be the host. I look forward to this all month. Basically, we tell 5 to 7 minute stories, and we prefer them without notes and not to be read out loud. We do have some stories that are a little longer, and people ask for those, for permission to tell those in advance. So those are normally placed later in the evening. About halfway through, approximately an hour into the event, we take a short break, and then we have our circle of introductions. And every month there's a different prompt. We have a nice one for you, created by none other than Meg Brown. Very fitting, March. You might guess what it has to do with, I don't know. But we'll have some announcements too. I know that Vicky has an important announcement, and Meg will have some announcements right after our break, and we'll begin with those. So without any further ado, I am going to welcome to the virtual Do Tell stage, Beverly Schwartz from New York.
Thank you. Okay. The name of my story is The Fisherman in the Sea. It's a true story of what happened to me when I was a freshman in college. It was a very foggy early spring morning in the ocean next to Southampton College. A teacher had given me her car keys and said, as an assignment, I need you to see a friend of mine who is going to tell you a story of which I want you to tell this coming Saturday, because it's the first time we're going to celebrate Earth Day. And hopefully there will be many more Earth Days in the future. It was 1970. So off I went. And she said, go to the very end of Montauk Point and you're going to see a sign. And on the sign is going to say Montauk Point. That's the very tip of Long Island. It ends. And behind the sign is the ocean. And you park next to the sign. And then you go down a dock and you will see a hut. That's where my friend lives. And he will tell you the story for Saturday. So I'm driving along and it's foggy and I have my windshield wipers on. It's like a misty rain. I don't know where I'm going. And I finally, the road ends and there's the sign, just like she said. Well, I got out of the car and I got this feeling in my stomach, like, where am I going? And I went next to the sign and there was the dock, an old wooden dock. And it had like holes in it. And I kept looking down as I was walking to make sure my foot didn't go through the wood and into the ocean. And as I walked down, the fog kind of cleared a little. And ahead of me, I saw a hut with smoke coming out of its pipe. I said, what am I doing here? And I went and I got to the door of the hut. And just as I went to knock, the door swung open. And it's an old man. And he says, I've been waiting all morning for you. Come in, come in. I'm so happy you're here. Mm-hmm. Oh, okay. So I walked in and behind him was a little wooden table with two old wooden chairs. And above him, coming down from the ceiling, was a light bulb swinging on a metal string or whatever. And it was, the light was going back and forth. And next to it, and I will never forget this, was a piece of tape. And all the dead flies and insects were caught on the tape above the table. I sat down and he gave me some tea in an old chipped mug. I was kind of cold, so I kind of kept my hands around the mug, but I never drank it. I looked around the room quickly before he closed the door. There was an old potbelly stove where the smoke was coming out of the pipe. There was a single bed on the other side, and there was a little sink with some shelves of food and dishes. And around the hut, I saw things on the wall, and I couldn't make them out. And he closes the door, and the only light was that one light above the table. And he said, "Come close, my dear. I have a story to tell you." Okay. And he started. When I was a boy, I grew up here on Montauk Point. I was not much of a student, but I loved to talk to the fishermen as they came back from Europe and their tales that they told. They would launch their boats from here and go over through the ocean to all of Ireland and England and all the European countries on the coast. And as they got to the coast, there was thousands and thousands of fish in different areas that they called fisheries. And these fisheries were used by all the fishermen, and nobody overfished. They took what they knew that they could catch and sell, and knew that then they would come back and find more fish later. Their fathers did it. So they all knew where all the fisheries up and down the coast were. And when they were sailing, they enjoyed it. They would see the porpoises and the whales and other ocean animals jump out of the ocean. And the water was just beautiful with no garbage in it or anything like we have today. It was just beautiful sailing, and they towed tails and they fixed their nets and they sang their songs. And he said, I wanted to be a fisherman too. And one day, when he was around 16, they asked him if he could join them, on a trip. He'd go, ask your mother permission. Well, he lied. He never told his mother where he was going, and off he went with them. And that became my career. I loved every minute of it. But there was a problem that started happening very slowly. Just very little things happened until you realize finally the horrible things that happened. When they started, originally they would see some nets floating in the ocean. And then they would see some plastic or some garbage floating in the ocean. And as the years went on, it got more and more, where it was miles and miles long, this like pond of pollution. And they saw animals that had been caught up and were died because they couldn't get unstuck from the nets or the plastic. And you could smell it, miles before you even came to it. Why were people doing this to the oceans? The fishermen said. Well, the other problem that arose was they would get to the fisheries. And the thousands of fish were getting less and less and less. Some of them disappeared altogether. Now, when they took their catch to the cities or the ports, they would stay at the pub, they would stay overnight, maybe even sightsee and stay there for a little while. And the fishermen said they have to know what's happening, because before long, we won't even have fish to bring to them. What could I do? He said. Oh, I know. I had to do something. And he thought and finally decided when he went from port to port, he would find the pubs, the mayor, the king, the queen, anybody that, the students at the university. And he would ask if he could talk to them. And he told them about the pollution of what was happening. He told them about the fisheries and said, we have to do something before it's too late. And he went up and down Europe for years and years, Come with me, my dear. I want to show you something, he said. Where are we going? I'm looking like, where would he take me? And he brings me over to the potbelly stove where there's a picture on the wall. And on the wall is a whole bunch of people he goes, that's the King and Queen of England and all they're the people that I talked to one day. And they gave me an award. See, it's hanging on my chest here, hanging out, an award for trying to save the oceans and telling people all about what I would like to save and educate people. And then he took me for a walk around the whole hut. And all the pictures I couldn't make out were him with people that weren't famous and people that were, all thanking him for all the work he was doing to try to organize local people and knowing what was happening and trying to solve the problem. Okay, my dear, the fog's coming in. Sit down. I have one more thing to ask you. Ask me? So he sat down and he comes real close to me. My dear, I have a question. I am an old man now. I am looking for someone to carry out my legacy. I hear you're going to tell the story Saturday, and your teacher told me you were also going to be a teacher. I thought I'm a freshman. I hope to be a teacher, but I couldn't know for sure. I go, where's this man going? And he says, my dear, I need someone to carry out my legacy. I need someone, and a teacher is what I asked your teacher to find me, because teachers make the best speakers to their students, their parents, to their community. And I need the word to get out about the problems of the ocean and the problems of the fisheries. I need you to promise that you will do that for me, even after Saturday, when you tell the story. I was only 19 years old, a freshman in college. He wanted me to promise something. I didn't want to tell him I would promise something I couldn't do. I said, well, okay, I'll promise. I'll try to do this. No, he said, you're not serious. You're just saying that for me to listen. I want a serious promise or I won't believe you. And there I sat in silence, what seemed to be an eternity. And I thought, well, it's a good cause that I could mention when I was teaching. I've never made a promise I didn't keep, but this is like almost a lifetime promise. If I promise him, Bev, I said to myself, are you really going to keep it? I leaned forward and we were almost nose to nose. And I said, I promise, I give you my word. I will tell your story if I become a teacher. And even if I don't become a teacher, I will mention it in conversations. That's what I want to hear, said the fisherman. Well, he said, you better get going. The fog's coming in and the storm's coming. You might not be able to get back in such a heavy fog. So I'm going to say, thank you for carrying out my legacy. And we sat up and he reached over and gave me a hug. And I said, oh, you smell fishy. And he says, everyone says that. And he brought me to the door and we opened it up. And he says, you promise? And I go, I promise. As I walked out the door and walked a little, I just turned around and there he was watching me. And he gave me 2 thumbs up and I gave him 2 thumbs back. And there he was with his floppy pants, his suspenders with a flannel shirt and a floppy hat. He looked like a fisherman. And I got back in the car, and that Saturday I did tell the story on the first Earth Day in 1970 at Southampton College, Long Island. And it was held throughout the world. Now, you think maybe I would forget that freshman that I made that promise, but that always stood to be, it was behind my back of my head thinking about this old man and his story. I did grow up, went to the rest of the college, and I got my first teaching job in 2nd grade in 1973. And for 35 years, while I was teaching, every Earth Day month, we did a whole month of activities. We did plays, we did books, we went to the New York State Museum and did exhibits and a play and a demonstration of the oceans and what was happening in pictures. And we went to the city hall, we went to the local colleges. We'd invite all the elected officials into our room, and they didn't know what they were getting into, but they heard the story. You're right, I said to myself about the old man. He knew what he was doing. He knew that as a teacher, if I kept the promise, his story would be told. And throughout the world, even today, people are trying to protect the oceans and the fisheries. Now, I'm retired now. I've carried on his legacy. Now the old man and I need to have your help carrying on my legacy and his legacy. So I hope by listening to this story, you will get an idea to help save our oceans, which you all probably know are really, really polluted. And finally, as an update, people felt strong enough in the world where this past couple of years, they built fleets of fish with big holes, and they went into a really polluted part of the ocean. And they got as much stuff as they could in their holes and brought it back to land where a factory was built. And they took as much of the plastic and other things that could be recycled and made new things out of them and disposed of the rest so that it wouldn't ruin our environment. And also the story of the fisheries were told, and more people became respectful of not using as many fishes that they would catch, fish. So that is my story. Please carry on the old man's legend and mine, and let people know that there is a problem with the ocean still. And they're building another couple of different fleets now of those big fish to go, not fish, but ships. And they are going out in other places of the world now where the oceans are polluted and trying to clean them up. Thank you.
Hey, thank you so much, Beverly. That was a wonderful story. And just in time for the, April's coming up, right? That's
Right, Earth Day. Month is always April. Yeah.
terrific.
That was,
love-
15 minutes, Bev,
Oh my God, I'm so sorry.
just so you know.
I got it.
Okay.
I'm sorry. Oops.
And it had a real Joseph Conrad feel to it, like walking into an old fisherman hut and he turns and tells you this story. I really enjoyed that. Thank you so much. All right. So we have a real treat. Our next teller is one of the co-founders of the Do Tell Swap from about, we think, for 13 years ago. Please welcome to the virtual stage, Elaine Stanley.
Good. Thank you. The little toy dog was covered with dust, but sturdy and staunch he stands. The little toy soldier was red with rust, and his musket molds in his hands. Time was when the little toy dog was new, and the soldier was passing fair, and that was the time when our little boy Blue kissed them and put them there. Now don't you go till I come, he said, and don't you make any noise. And toddling off to his trundle bed, he dreamed of the pretty toys. And while he was dreaming, an angel's song awakened our little boy Blue. Oh, the years are long, the years are many, the little toy friends are true. Aye, faithful to little boy Blue they stand, each in the same old place, awaiting the touch of a little hand and the smile of a little face. And as they are waiting these long years through, in the dust of that little chair, they wonder what has become of their little boy Blue since he kissed them and put them there. Thank you.
Oh, wow.
Oh, thank you, Elaine. That was really touching.
Short and sweet.
Do you think it helps you to memorize the story with it rhyming? Does that make it easier, do you think?
Actually, it makes it harder.
I wondered about that.
If you don't know the story inside out, backwards and forwards, upside down, and then right side up,
Yeah.
all you have to do is be on stage and come to a line and stop and not know the next word, and you are dead in the water.
Oh. And if you make a mistake because it doesn't rhyme, it will be a glaring one, I would assume. Wow.
It was there also.
Yeah, the pressure is really on. That's taking a big risk.
Well,
thank
it
you.
is, but it's, especially if it's like the face on the barroom floor, it tells a story, and it's amazing that it can be in rhyme. Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
So this was a short story in rhyme.
Mhm.
Well, Elaine, it was very short, very sweet. It was just over a minute. I wish it would have been longer. Anyway, thank you.
Yeah, it's a short story. Thank you.
Thank you, Elaine.
Thank you.
Very good. And so we are on to our third teller, and that is, I have to find Beth. Oh, I just passed Beth. There you go. Beth's iPhone. Please welcome to the Do Tell virtual stage, Beth.
We can't hear you.
Yeah. Okay. Little tech frustration in the last few days, but I'm so glad everybody's here. My story comes from a time in Ireland when the farmers and the leprechauns were a little closer together. In fact, they were pretty friendly sometimes. And at this time lived a farmer named Philip, but he was not so friendly. In fact, he was so stingy that his neighbors were pretty sure he'd sold his hair to the leprechauns for their pillow filling, because his bald head was as smooth as a hard-boiled egg. Now, Philip was not one to share with anybody, not at all. And one day he was checking the fresh milk can in his barn and noticed some was missing. Oh, was he furious. He was so furious. In fact, he yelled out, "Thief, this thief is going to pay me double. No, triple for the milk he took." Oh, and he stormed back to the house. And well, his wife, Annie, was used to all these rantings over the years. She said, "It was just a wee bit. We'll hardly miss it." Oh, Philip said, "No one takes my milk without paying. No one. I'm going to go catch me a thief." And he went back to the barn and he hid behind the straw pile just enough so that he could see anyone approaching. Well, around dusk, the leprechaun Redcap appeared with a tiny little pail and stepped towards the big milk can. But Philip jumped right in front and said, "Aha, I caught you red-handed. What do you say to that?" Well, Redcap looked up at him and said, "Philip, you're a miser and a terrible grump. You are always complaining about how my thorn tree, where I live, is too close to your cornfields. And now you're accusing me of stealing your milk? Your father, he always let me have some milk. And your grandfather also shared his milk with me. But you want to be paid. Well, what is it that you want?" Well, Philip was pretty excited about this. He thought, "I want gold. I want gold for all the milk you took from me. I want gold for all the milk you took from my father. And I want gold for all the milk you took from my grandfather. And what's more, I want back pay for all the years you lived under that thorn tree. And if you don't pay fair, I'm going to cut that thorn tree down and plant corn instead." Well, Redcap took a breath, gave a little leap on his toes, and his cap flew off his head high up in the air and landed plop, right on Philip's head. Philip was tugging and pulling. It couldn't move at all, not at all. Redcap looked at him and said, well, if it's corn you want, it's corn you'll get. And just like that, he was out of the barn in the wink of an eye. Philip trudged back to the house where Annie also could not get the cap off his head. They pulled and they worked at it. It would not budge. So there was nothing to it, but he had to go to bed with the cap on. In the morning, when he woke up, he felt something growing under that cap. And he said, that thieving leprechaun, he's giving me back my hair, Annie. Well, Annie took her scissors and she cut up a little hole in the seam there and peeked in and said, well, if it's hair, it's green. And in fact, it's not only green, they're little ears on the stalk. So, husband, that's not hair on your head, it's corn. Oh. Philip was speechless, and then he cried out, I've been bewitched. I've been bewitched. Quick, we have to gather some eggs and get some sweet butter together. I have to go make an apology. He went out to the thorn tree and called out, Redcap, please take my gifts. Oh, Redcap, please take my gifts and you can have as much milk as you want. Yeah, but just take this cap and the corn off my head. Please remove it. Well, Redcap was kind of ambling over and looked up at him and said, well, I'd like a fence around my thorn tree. And by the way, about a wee bit of cheese at the end of each week. Agreed, said Philip. Just remove the cap and the corn. And just like that, Redcap nodded his head and his cap flew on back to his own head. And he was so glad he had missed his cap for sure. And Philip felt his own bald head and turned on his heel to head over to his work area to build a fence, and carried with him a little attitude adjustment. And that story is the end, and it comes from our friend Pleasant Despain, who has a lot of stories to share and tell, and from the all tales to tell from the world. So, and there we go. No Irish lilt. I wish I had it.
Wow, very timely, just in time for St. Patrick's Day. That was lovely. Thank you for that. It was interesting that he was still called Redcap, even though he didn't have the red cap anymore. It's great. Corn growing on his head. Oh,
And
and
5 minutes, Beth, so thank you.
Oh, okay.
5 minutes. A nice little bit of cheese at the end of every week. That's all we want, isn't it? I agree. I think that would top off the week quite nicely. Thank you so much, Beth. And moving through our roster, we're in for a treat. And Sharon, you're still in Washington, right?
Yep.
That's kind of neat. It makes, with Beverly in New York and you in the state of Washington, we really have gone national. So please welcome to the virtual national Do Tell stage, Sharon Elwell.
The Washington branch of our international stage. It was a beautiful summer day in Napa. The very first day of migrant education summer school. And I was to be teaching a combined class of second and third graders. Migrant kids, to qualify for the program, have to belong to a family that works seasonally and travels with the crops. And because of that, they're usually behind other children. Their school year is often disrupted. And so the summer school program is aimed at bringing them up to speed so that they can be ready for fall to catch up with everyone else. And I was excited. So when the bell rang to get the morning going, I ran to my spot on the sidewalk, put my toes on the line, and waited for my kids to come and line up. I could see those kids over the asphalt. Some were climbing on bars, some were swinging, some were bouncing balls, but nobody was lining up. I looked around for the other teachers, and they were standing in little clusters, coffee cups in their hands, chatting. No one seemed to have noticed that a bell had even rung. And I thought, oh, this is going to be rough. If you cannot respond to the normal conventions of a school day, how will you ever manage to get through these sessions? But after a few minutes, one or two of the teachers stopped chatting and came and stood in line. And a few minutes later, a couple more, and then some kids noticed that, and they came and lined up. And eventually we had a critical mass, and all the kids were in line and ready to go in. By the time I was in the classroom, 10 minutes of valuable instructional time had been lost. And I was feeling pretty frowny about that. But the worst thing was to come because of Saida. She was a wild thing. And as she ran in, she pulled somebody's hair and she grabbed somebody's pencil and she knocked somebody's backpack on the floor and she ran around the room aimlessly with no direction, like a little dervish. And I got ready to say to the aide, you need to take this child to the principal's office for some isolation and reflection time, when I noticed that the other kids were responding to her very differently. They ran up and kind of surrounded her. They were patting her on the hair, rubbing her back. One of the girls was giving her a hug. They were treating her as if she was the victim rather than the creator of all that chaos. And so watching that, I saw her calm down as they led her to her seat, gave her one last pat on the shoulder. And I decided not to say anything. Well, the same thing happened during PE. Raul had a terrible hot-headed attitude. And when he struck out in softball, he threw the baseball bat at the third baseman. Fortunately, it didn't hit anybody, but that made him even madder. So he picked up a rock and threw that at the pitcher, which didn't hit him either. But the kids behaved the same way toward this hot-headed little boy. They came running up and put their arms around him and told him he was a great player and everybody strikes out once in a while. And they walked with him to the bench as he calmed down and sat down. And all of the things that I was about to say, I decided not to say. Well, it was getting close to the 4th of July, and we were making pictures during art history, the last period of the day. So we were drawing pictures of flags and eagles and Betsy Ross. And I had strung a wire from one corner to the other of the classroom to hang and display things. But it was getting close to lunchtime, and I was thinking about a chicken salad sandwich on a croissant and a nice long swim and taking a nap. And I didn't want to spend all of that gorgeous rest time hanging up 30 pictures on a wire with clothespins. So I got a bright idea. And I said, let's have a contest and we will pick the best pictures. We'll have a first place blue ribbon and a second place with a red ribbon and a third place with a yellow ribbon, and we'll put them up on the wall. And little Miguel didn't even look up from where he was coloring, and he said, let's not. And I was just shocked because I thought, everybody loves competition. This would be so much fun. Why don't you want to do that, Miguel? You might win. Your picture's very good. And he looked at me the way you look at someone to whom you need to speak with very small words and very slowly and carefully. And he said, let's look around at all of these pictures. They're very nice, aren't they? Well, yeah, I had to agree. They are all very nice, Miguel. You're right. Well, if we pick the best one and the best three, those three people will be happy, and all of the rest of us will be sad. In fact, those three people won't even be happy, because the one who got the yellow ribbon and the one who got the red ribbon will both think that they should have gotten the blue ribbon. And that means that out of everybody in our whole class, there will only be one happy person. And you don't want to do that, do you? So there went my first hour of my wonderful afternoon as I spent the day clambering up on desk and putting all 30 pictures up on the wire. Well, the next morning, when the bell rang to line up, I was still in the office making copies, but I did not stop what I was doing and run for my spot on the sidewalk, because I had learned then that there's plenty of time for me to teach those children what they need to know for next year, and plenty of time for them to teach me what I need to know.
Sharon, that story has so much interesting wisdom in it. Now, I love when we can learn from our students. I just wonder how they learn so much. It must have been like you were in an alternate universe or something.
Yeah.
And isn't it funny how whenever we as teachers, we want to get something done, we always turn it into a contest. We're like, who can do this the fastest?
I know.
Thank goodness we still have this as a swap, because that's kind of what's happened to storytelling too. They've turned so many of these storytelling events into slams and contests. And of course, if you got first place, Sharon, then Bev would be furious and she wouldn't come to the next one. That was a joke. Anyway, I really enjoyed that. And of course, it has that preciousness of learning from our students in it. Thank you.
Thank you.
It was 7.5 minutes, Sharon.
Oh, good. That's what I was about to ask.
Perfect.
Very good. So I think we have just enough time for one of our longer stories. Vicki has asked for extra time, and I'm going to call her up to our national Do Tell virtual stage. Vicki Ness.
All the way from Sebastopol, which was actually named after a Russian town, I understand. So we're international. Somebody made a comment last time that we need fairy tales. So I actually came up with a fairy tale. So here it is. Once upon a time, there were two kingdoms, and the bigger kingdom of maybe 700 souls followed a queen who was elegant and cool, compassionate and judicious. The smaller kingdom had about 300 people, and they followed a witch. And she was lots of fun, and she had dreams, and she did artwork, and there's nothing she liked better than to show up at the pub on Friday night for beer and pretzels, and they'd party all through the night telling stories and singing songs, and then when they were hungover the next day, they had cupcakes. Well, one day, the elegant tall queen was coming down the road with her entourage behind her. Coming from the other side was the witch with her weird animalistic naiads, trolls entourage. And neither of them would budge. So the entourages backed off and watched. And sure enough, The two got into a terrible fight. It looked like a Dust Bowl snow globe. Dust flying, everything. And in the end, the one who won was the tall and elegant, beautiful queen. And she turned to address her entourage. And when she opened her mouth, you think the witch is gone? The witch isn't gone. She's in here. Oh, now the tall, elegant queen had a witch inside her. Oh no, big problem, because she couldn't go rule her own people, because as soon as she opened her mouth, they wouldn't want to hear it because it's a witch's voice. And she couldn't go rule the witch's people because they'd see the queen and they wouldn't want to hear what she had to say. So the queen witch queen wisely went up the hill into the clouds, up into the mountains, followed by their various entourages, and there they sat for months. All of a sudden, between the two kingdoms, right on that line, appeared a platform and a bonfire, big, huffing bonfire, and an entourage, a very strange entourage. There was a fair lady with naiad colors and hummingbird feathers and wings that fluttered. And over there was a squire with a frog face, frog face, and all his brocades and his buttons. And a knight that looked somewhat like a troll, but maybe not. And over here was another beautiful lady in waiting with the face of a fox. And there in the middle of them all was the minister. He and his wonderful silks and his knee breeches and his buttons, and the face of a hedgehog. Hedgehog face. Yep. And he read from his paper. He said, everybody come. Must listen. You must listen. They did. They came around to listen. And he told them that he had to show them something very important. And with that, here came the knight with a pillow, velvet and tasseled, with the witch's crown on it that was gold, cast to be like briar roses. And he threw it into the fire and everybody drew back. But they caught all the gold melting and they poured it into casts for doubloons, 1,000 doubloons. And while they were cooling, the little minister said, he waved his paws, oh yes, you will each get a doubloon, but you must spend it on building a castle for your ruler, and it must be beautiful, it must be wonderful. And there's one more thing. And with that, out came a beautiful lady in waiting, floating on her little wings with a beautiful pillow and the crystal crown of the queen. She promptly threw it on the ground and it shattered into 1,000 pieces. And the little minister said, everybody must take one piece only, one piece, but everybody must have one piece. So everybody got their still warm doubloon, and they got their piece of crystal. And poof, the entourages were gone. So throughout the year, both kingdoms planned how to do this castle. And the staid and intelligent engineers from the Queen's area walked over to the witches' area to talk to the designers and the artists. And for their part, the visionaries and the dreamers walked over to the Queen's part for a little practical understanding from the craftsmen. And slowly but surely, the most beautiful castle showed up. And sure enough, a year to the day, poof, there they were again, the entourage and the platform. Everybody in their finest outfits. The little minister was so excited. Oh, what a beautiful castle. Oh, you've done such a beautiful job. Oh, I love it. He said, but one thing, you must take your piece of the crown and put it right here. So they did. they take their little sharp glittering piece and they put it on the platform. And when the very last piece was there, like magic, the crown reassembled itself and everybody drew back. Oh, this is wonderful. He said, oh, and his little paws went, and he said, do you know what this means? It means that the castle is now yours. Oh, yes, it does. You can go through the castle and choose any room you want to heal your sick or house your homeless or school your children or support your seniors or dispense justice or offer compassion, whatever you want. The castle is yours. But there's one more thing. And with that, he picked up the crown again and he shattered it into 1,000 pieces. And he told them, you must each take everybody take a piece. And every year at this date, you will come back with that piece. And so long as everybody has their piece, the crown will come back together again. But if even one piece is missing, the crown won't come back together again. And you'll lose the castle and you'll wind up with a leader you don't recognize. You don't want that. So hold tight to that little piece. And now come in to your castle and look at the banquet room. We filled it with roasts, and pies and wine and delights. He said, everything you could possibly want. And then all of a sudden he couldn't contain himself. And beer and pretzels and cupcakes, party down. And so they did. Was that 10 minutes? I'm not sure.
No, Vicky, it was just under 8 minutes.
Great.
Awesome. Beautiful. Thank you.
Did you write that?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. That was magnificent.
I don't normally write fairy tales, but I decided to try it, and there it is.
And we all know every good fairy tale ends with beer and pretzels.
Yep.
And every good fairy tale begins with once upon a time.
Yeah. Right. Well, thank you, Vicky. You are so versatile. You do personal stories, imaginative stories, fairy tales. And as usual, we were treated to so many different voices in that. Thank you very much. So we've come to about halfway through. I think it's a good time to take a 5-minute break. And what I recommend that we do is put your view on gallery, and that way you can see all the different faces of the people that are present. If you want to chat a little bit, that's a good way to do that. So you switch your view. It's up in the right-hand corner. There is a little square with 3 dots above it, and it says view, and you can select gallery if you'd like to stay behind for a little informal chat. Otherwise, you can certainly turn your camera off, go get a hot cup of tea or a beer and a pretzel, and be back in about 5 minutes. So around 7:55, I will turn my camera back on and we will start up with our prompt, the question of the month, and we'll have some announcements. And if you are interested in telling a story, some people may have joined and not gotten signed up, you can certainly let Katie Mangan know. Just put it in the chat, or else just speak directly to Katie. So I'm going to pause the recording now, and we'll come back at 7:55.
You know what they say, and I learned this at the genre storytelling, that if you tell, as soon as it gets recorded, it's officially copyrighted.
Oh, good.
So technically, if it's been recorded, no matter what the story is, it's been copyrighted.
Oh, good. Good.
Wow, like this
The only-
Zoom meeting.
Like this Zoom meeting.
Vicky, I loved your voices. I thought they were very
Yeah.
interesting character in the voices of your characters.
Who was that saying? I can't see you.
This is Deb talking to
Oh.
Vicky.
Hi.
Debbie in the dark. Yeah, I'm over here in the dark. I was just saying,
That's
Yeah.
the thing about
Kathleen and the
Vicky's
witch were-
story.
yeah.
Unless you can do a hedgehog face, I'm not sure you can tell Vicky's story.
Certainly not
Oh,
like
I
her.
wasn't watching. I was listening though, because I was not on, and I just liked listening to the voice. Very good.
Oh, thank you.
All
Yeah,
right,
just
everybody.
remember, you need to get permission to tell somebody else's story.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And if they say no, you have to be willing to let it go.
Thanks
Exactly.
for saying that. Thanks for telling us, because
Also,
I'm
if
get-
you can put it in writing and send it to yourself,
plagiarism.
if you put it in writing and send it to yourself, then it's considered copyrighted. You just don't open it after you send it, but you put the date on it and then it proves like if there was a court thing. It was this date, you wrote it, they looked at the mail things and when it was mailed and
Mhm.
it's yours.
And
Well,
you know
welcome
what,
back
Elaine?
From the break. And it sounds like, wow, we have a really interesting conversation going on. That's really, really wonderful. And yeah, it's an important one about copywriting.
Mhm.
And maybe I should say that again, that
Mhm.
you do need permission from
Okay.
tellers. There's
Mhm.
also a rule that if you can find 3 different versions of a folktale or fairy tale published, 3 different versions, not just reprints of the same version, then it is fair game and you don't need permission. That's
Mm.
that rule was mentioned in a SAC board meeting, and it was Marilyn McPhee who told us that is a kind of a general guideline. So 3 different published versions, then it would be fair game.
Fair game.
Any-
But you're referring
Question.
to folk tales or traditional tales, older tales. Is that what I understand? Not someone creating a new one?
Any story.
Well,
any
if there's
story.
3 different versions of it, then it's fair game. Normally, when it's somebody's personal story, there's only one version of
Thank you.
it.
That's what I wanted to know.
If we were to give credit to the storyteller, that would still be violating the copyright.
If you
Even
don't
if you
have
give it
permission.
without permission, you can't.
Yeah,
Without
you should ask
permission,
for
it would be-
permission.
Yeah, I understand.
Now, I
understand.
was telling a story from a book that says stories to tell. Like I felt like it was implicitly, to share, to
Giving you
tell.
permission.
Yeah.
Well, that sounds like it is permission, yeah.
Yeah, because it was written in that, in that format of
Vein,
tell
yeah.
these stories. Don't just, they're not complicated, obviously.
I
Anyway,
wondered that because they were saying that the Seuss people who guard his stories came after someone and sued them for telling a Dr. Seuss story. But I think we do that constantly at schools and everywhere. What's the
But you're
difference?
not doing it for money. It's
I-
different when you're doing it for pay, like you're putting on a storytelling program.
So if we were telling each other and we were not doing it for money, it would be all right?
It's all right. If you're doing it at a swap, it's all right. As long as you're doing it free. If you're being paid, then that's another story.
Interesting.
Oh, okay, that's what I wanted.
Good
Thank
changes
you.
a lot.
So Sharon, if you want to give back the $5 I paid you for coming, you can go ahead and tell that story.
All right. Well, I'm going to tell about you being bit by the scorpion. Yeah.
Right.
Oh.
All right. Welcome
Is that
back.
before or after the vacuum cleaner?
Oh God, speaking of that. So we have a prompt for this month, and it is seasonal, as usual. You might have had a guess as to what it's about, but this month's prompt is, do you believe in luck? And as you answer it, it'd be nice if you just said your name and where you're speaking from. So my name is Brandon Spars. I'm a high school teacher here in Santa Rosa, California. It's important to say the state now too. I do believe in luck, and it's because I'm a fisherman. You have to. Man, I mainly believe in bad luck because I fish a lot on the Russian River, and I went about 25 times and I caught one fish this steelhead season. So yes, I believe in
Mhm.
luck, and unfortunately, I don't believe in good luck. But, I certainly had that experience. I'm going to pass it over to Katie.
I'm Katie Mangan and I live in Santa Rosa. And yes, I believe in luck, good and bad.
Very good. And
Mhm.
maybe before Beverly leaves, because she's on New York time, she can introduce herself.
I believe that instead of saying I believe in luck, is you have to make your own choices of the situations you put yourself in. And that can bring bad or good luck. And it, unless you make your own situation of what you're doing, how you're doing it, why you're doing it, then things will happen that will bring you a type of luck.
Hmm. Very nice. And next we have Sharon.
Yeah, that reminds me of, who was it that said that? The harder I work, the luckier I get. I think,
Yeah.
yeah, there's something to that. And it also reminds me about that country song about, if it weren't for bad luck, I'd have no luck at all. Yeah.
That's terrific. And we have Debbie in the dark.
Hi. Okay, a story about luck. Bad luck just wanders around. One never knows when bad luck will show up. But good luck likes to be recognized. And the more we recognize our good luck and be grateful for our good luck, the more she comes around.
Oh,
Thanks.
Oh, I like that.
Very nice.
that was very wise.
I thank you. I've tried to be wise.
And Elaine.
Hi, honey, here.
Well, I'm from Santa Rosa, California, and because of the story I tell about the day that luck and intelligence first met, I definitely believe in luck, good and bad. And I think we make it ourselves.
That's great. And next we have Ellie Shiva.
Ellie,
You're muted.
Come here, come here. Give me a kiss. Come on.
No,
Kiss.
thank you.
There you go.
Can you hear me now?
yes.
Okay. I'm in Petaluma, California. And I think that I agree with like the majority of the speakers that my participation is needed usually for either good or bad luck. And I can frame it and I can change it by if I'm having sometimes, but I can change my mood even if the bad luck doesn't go away. I can think about it in a different way.
Mhm.
So that's same with good luck. I try not to alter that. Okay, so that's my answer.
Thank you, Ellie Shiva.
Sure.
And Beth. Beth, are you there?
I am. I got a phone ringing in the back.
Oh,
Excuse me.
that's bad
Okay.
luck.
Well, it is, it's kind of like fortune. Luck is, I always think of that horseshoe. The luck stays in if it's up, and it comes right out if you put it down. So you have to be careful what you're looking for. Yeah. I was just thinking in my yard, I just have to say in my garden, I feel very lucky that somehow magically all these calla lilies appear and just transform the whole place for the short amount of time we have before the heat comes and it dries out. So I don't know if that's luck, but it's kind of fun because I didn't do anything to create it.
Yeah,
I get to enjoy it, and I'm enjoying the stories. Thank you so much.
thank you. And Vina, you are spotlit.
Okay, and I'm not muted. Well, I guess I don't really believe in good luck and bad luck, but I do believe that all of us here on the screen tonight, and really all of us in the US, not all, but most, are so lucky. We just are at the right time and the right place in the world. or at least our lives until now have been charmed. I guess that's what I'd say.
Mm. It's important to not take this for granted, isn't it, Vina?
Yeah.
Especially with what's going on in the Ukraine.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And next we have Genevieve.
I don't exactly follow the idea about good luck and bad luck,
Mhm.
but I do believe that much is to be gained by appreciation. And you touched on that with regard to not taking anything for granted. And I particularly like the idea of noticing what I call serendipity
Yeah.
and marvelous coincidences.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times they're right there for the taking if we just notice.
Mm-hmm.
Beautiful. That's exactly what I was trying to say. You said it better.
And here is Meg.
I am really loving all these answers. They're really great, guys. You are very wise people. I do believe in luck, but I believe some people have it and some people kind of don't. And so my dad was very lucky. He could always go to Las Vegas and make, and win money, and it was great, but not so much the rest of us. So, but I've been very lucky, I think, in my life. In terms of just the things that have come along, and you do have to take advantage of it. You have to grab a hold of that luck when it comes to you. So I really want to thank you guys for your wonderful answers to this.
Thank you, Meg. And here is Vicky.
I'm in Sebastopol, California, and I kind of believe in luck, but in as far as people said, the harder you work, the luckier you get. But I have noticed that if you share your good luck, it kind of like it goes to them, but then it ricochets back out and hits you again, so you get like double blessed. If you share it, it comes back to you.
That's nice. And next we have John and Cher. Hi, John. Hi, Cher. I think you're muted.
You muted?
Oh, no, now you're not. Sorry.
Yeah, talking softly. Well,
Yeah, you were talking softly.
okay. So, I personally believe more in karma than luck itself, and also just the way you look at things, because stuff happens all the time, and you can interpret it in, as either a good thing or a bad thing, and sometimes it's just what happened. So, and we're in Bodega, and that's a good thing. We're lucky.
Yeah, everybody there says that.
I guess I believe that you make your own luck, and it is important to appreciate it. Other people have. We have a practice every night for several years. Before bed, we say what we're thankful for, and
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
brought us more blessings to be thankful for.
Gratitude. Yes. Well, thank you for that. And I might be mistaken, but I think our last contributor is Jesse. And Jesse, would you turn your video on? Otherwise, I can't share your screen. Jesse, are you there? There we go. Hi, Jesse.
I'm at work, sorry.
Oh, that's
What do
okay.
you need me to do? Just turn my video off?
Do you believe in luck?
Oh, I absolutely do. And I am listening as I'm sorry, I shouldn't. I'm a private nurse and I'm working with someone, so I don't usually talk, or this is so exciting.
Okay.
But yes, I do believe in luck, but I do believe we make our luck. And just to jump on what somebody said a few minutes ago, it's like, I think the more you share your blessings with others, the more it returns in, so I'll say I'm far enough away. So yeah, luck is a wonderful thing. I call
Yeah.
it blessings, but that's okay.
Oh, well, thank you. And thank you for bringing us with you through your
Yeah.
job. And
Well,
your
it was so perfect because I haven't been here since COVID. This is my first, but I wanted to bring some stories to the child that I care for. And we had fairy tales and things like that. So it was really, really wonderful. So thank
Oh,
you.
that's great.
I'm so glad I
Wonderful.
hopped on this first meeting since COVID.
Well, Jesse, you are always welcome here, and please do tune
I'll be
in.
back. I'm doing live things myself. So not storytelling, but more commentary.
Wonderful.
Yeah. So thank you, everybody. I'm
Well, thank
gonna
you for coming.
figure out how to mute myself here.
Yeah,
There you go.
very good. Now,
You know, I was just thinking about this is that all my relatives came from the area of, Romania and Russia and Poland. And I've been looking, how lucky I am that they made it to the United States and I'm here,
yeah.
Otherwise I would be
Mhm.
back there with all the action is,
Mhm.
That's luck.
That is luck. Thank you for all of your contributions. Katie, did I hit everybody that you can tell?
Oh,
Did anybody not get a
think
chance
so.
to share? Okay. I hate when that happens,
Oh, there
but
was Tom.
sometimes it,
Is Tom still with us? Tom Lubis? Or has he
oh,
been?
yeah.
I think he's
I
Tom.
don't see Tom. Okay.
All right.
Very good. So I'm going to let a couple people make some announcements. I know we have at least two, but if anybody else does, they're welcome to announce whatever they have going on and they want to share with the group. So first up, we have Meg with several announcements.
Yes, thank you. Actually, these are posted on the SAC website. So this is one of your very best resources to find out all kinds of wonderful things that are going on. And I encourage everybody to become a member of the Storytelling Association of California, or SAC for short, and take advantage of their newsletter, which every member gets, and also take a look at their website often. It's really rich. And so I want to remind everybody, let's see, that the Bay Area Storytelling Festival is back. And it's back both in person as well as virtually. It'll be April 16th. It'll be all day from 9 to 6. They have a great lineup. And one of my very favorite guys is going to be there, Willie Claflin. And let me tell you, this is a treat because he doesn't do a lot as far as I can tell anymore, but he is wonderful. Diane Ferlot, who has always been so generous with her storytelling at our celebrations, and just a wonderful Bay Area storytelling person. Ethnotech, I have only heard them once and they blew me away. So definitely not to be missed. Let's see, we have Sheila Arnold, which some of you might have heard recently. She's excellent. Corey,
Rosen.
Thank you, Rosen. I haven't heard Corey, but
He's the
it's always
host
a
of
treat.
The Moth.
He's great fun.
Oh, okay.
Phenomenal.
Okay. Wonderful. So, this is an opportunity to hear somebody that I haven't heard. So that's really great too. I think that's the ones. It's at the Orinda Community Center. So you can go and, mix with all the other storytellers that are going to be there. Or you can, go virtually, which is also a really great thing. So definitely put that on your calendar. That's April 16th. So that's coming up. Saturday, March 12th. I guess that's coming up this next weekend via Zoom. Now, this is really interesting. The SAC is going to be having a member meeting talking about what's going on, current programs that are going on now, and also future programs that they're looking at for the next year. And it's really interesting to hear people who are so involved and moving storytelling forward throughout the state. So that would be really great to attend. That's on March 12th at 2. And then at 3 o'clock, they'll have the Regional Gem concert at 3. And that our regional gem is Joy Swift. She is a South Bay storyteller, an NSN Pacific Region Service Award, and apparently she does a lot of promoting and helping people get into storytelling and work on their stories. So
and she has for many, many, many years.
Yes, Elaine, I'm sure you know her well.
Oh, yeah.
So, you know, this is a really good opportunity to see what SAC does, but as well as just listen to a really renowned storyteller. So that's going on. And then don't forget your genre storytelling is coming up. That's on March 16th. It is Myths and Fables at 7 p.m. Always a fun time doing that. Do register early if you want to be a part of that, because trying to register at the very last minute, in my experience, is not pleasant. So those are the three things that I was able to pull up and wanted to let you guys know about.
Thank you.
Thank you, Meg. And I know that Vicky, you have an announcement, so I'm going to give you the spotlight.
Yeah, I am starting to teach a method of creating your own stories from the inside out. Most people create stories from the end and work their way down like murder mystery people do. And I start from a waking dream start, and then there's a trellis that you can work and create the story around it. It's a 2-hour class, the 30th of April. And I'll put my email, I guess, in. Does that make sense? Is that okay?
Is it going to be virtual?
Yes, I'm sorry. Yes, it will be. Yes, it's interactive, it's virtual, and you should come away with, a half a dozen exercises that you can use to help you create your stories.
Vicky, are you giving a price for this?
$15 a person.
Vicky, can you send me an email about that? I'd love to put this up on the website. If that's good for you. If that's,
yes, it is.
If that's something you'd like to just offer to the, folks who are visiting the website, or even the membership, because yeah, that sounds wonderful.
Yeah, actually, I had talked to Sarah about it, and she said that I could use your Zoom room. And then I looked up how to use a Zoom room, and it scared the bejesus out of me. I'm doing this first one just on Zoom, my Zoom Pro. But yes, I will send that. I send it to you, Meg.
Yes, that would be great. It's Do Tell Story Swap. At what is it? I have your email. I'll send you a reminder.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, thank you. That sounds wonderful.
Do we have any other announcements? Give me a wave or some kind of signal, and I will let you have the floor. Okay. I don't see anything. Very good. So we're in for our second half of stories. I think we have 3 and maybe more, who knows? I know that Katie has a longer 10-minute story, and she is next on our list. So please welcome Katie Mangan.
Thank you. Eduardo had heard about this lake, which was so beautiful, apparently, that it could not be described in words. But it also had some kind of darker side to it. Well, of course, he was so curious, he had to go and find out for himself. He first saw the lake as he was coming down the steep mountain path. There it was below him, sparkling like a jewel. Deep blues, aquamarine, light greens. And he just wished he was eagle and that he could just soar down and really look at it. But he continued on the path, but he was really frustrated because there were boulders or trees in the way, and he could not see the lake again. But further down the path, he saw a tall tree and he thought, I'll go to that tree and I'll climb it. So he got to the tree. He was so excited that he began to climb. When, what do you think you're doing? Climbing the tree? You didn't ask for permission. You have no respect. He jumped back. He looked around. There was nobody there. But then he looked up at the tree, and coming down, swinging, it seemed, from branch to branch to branch, was this figure. And suddenly, right before him, was a small peasant woman. She looked at him, and in her eyes there was every color of the lake that he had seen. Mm-hmm. Grandmother, I am sorry. It was so wrong of me to climb the tree without asking for permission. Now, he used the term grandmother as a term of respect, and she liked that. She looked at him and gave a little smile. Are you hungry, lad, then? Oh, yes. Well, then, come with me. I'll cook us both breakfast. So she linked her arm with his, and they walked towards her cottage. Now, lad, I'll need some wood. You'll have to cut some wood. I'll need it for the fire. I'm going to bake us some bread. Oh, and then you'll need to go to the hen house, let them out, and collect the eggs. I'm going to scramble them. I nearly forgot. You'll have to go and milk the cow. Don't forget to put a lot of beautiful new spring grass for the cow. So Eduardo, he chopped the wood and he brought it into the kitchen, and I think the peasant woman was pretty impressed. He took the basket and went off to the hen house, let them out, and collected the eggs, all different colors, deep browns, greens, light blue. And he put them in the basket and took them back to the kitchen. And then he went out and cut some grass, big armful, and walked into the meadow and found the cow and milked the cow. And when he came back to the kitchen, why, the breakfast was all ready for them. And they sat down and they had a tall glass of sweet, still warm milk, so delicious. A plate full of fluffy, golden scrambled eggs and freshly baked bread. Well, after breakfast, she looked at him and said, would you like to hear about the lake? Yes, please. Oh, come with me then. And so again, she put her arm in his, and they walked across the meadow. She laughed. Oh, you'll think I'm going senile because I'm walking away from the lake, aren't I? Oh, well, look at this. Time will tell. You'll understand everything. And they walked into a wood. And in the center of the wood, there was a clearing. And looking around, Eduardo could see it was a sacred grove. And out of one of her pockets, she drew a little bag. It was filled with bee pollen. And she proceeded to draw or to make a perfect circle with this bee pollen. Mm. Step into the golden circle, lad. Now, in one hand, she had a twig. We're going to start in the south. This is the town that you will come to later this afternoon. And she began to draw the outline of the lake, all the inlets. She marked the 9 creeks that tumbled down the mountainside into the lake. And as she got to each creek, she would name it and ask Eduardo to repeat it. Remember that, lad. Remember that. And then they came to the town in the north, and she just smiled and stopped. But grandmother, you haven't shown me the eastern side of the lake. Oh, I'm not going to do that. That doesn't belong to me. It's none of my business. Oh, that's the lady of the lake. She owns that, the goddess, the one We cannot name. Now, lad, be careful. You must respect her. Do you understand? You must respect her. It was later that afternoon that Eduardo walked into that town in the south. And he took one of the streets and it took him all the way down to the harbor. And in the harbor, there was a ferry. And the captain waved him over and said that it was the last run of the day and would he like to take a ride on the ferry to see the lake. And so Eduardo got on the ferry and sat and watched the western shore. And as he passed each creek, he named it. And they finally came to the town in the north and all the passengers disembarked. And they waited a little while for the new passengers to come on. But by the time they were leaving the harbor, well, the light was failing. And Eduardo saw that on the eastern shore, there was now a mist and he couldn't see anything. He rented a room in a house that overlooked the lake. And during the night, he woke up, perhaps really early in the morning. And so he very quietly went outside. And he looked at the water, and the water had changed color again. It was black. And he looked up at the stars. There were thousands of them. And when he looked back at the lake, there were the stars reflected in that black water. He heard a tiny voice in his heart, and he strained to listen. And the more he listened, the louder that voice became. You are a beloved child of the universe. You are deeply loved and deeply cherished. Blessings and abundance to you all. That came in at 8 minutes and 18 seconds. Thank you.
So you were timing yourself. Thank you.
I was
Did you give yourself a signal? That's just such a wonderful example of how every detail in your telling seems to have such significance. I really enjoy your stories, Katie. So I'm going to dust off an old one that I have to tell in 2 weeks, and I haven't told it in a long time. I think it was the very first story I ever told at our swap, probably 5 or 6 years ago. I'm not even sure. Elaine referenced it earlier. Anyway, so here it goes. I grew up here in the Bay Area, California, and I went to high school out here. But my family always kept a house on a river in the state of Missouri, where I was from. And I spent just about every summer there and loved the place. Well, after I graduated from college, I moved far away from Missouri, far away from California too. I went pretty much all the way around the world to the nation of Indonesia, where I served as a volunteer teacher for several years. I met a woman, fell in love, and we got married there. She was Balinese. And my mother was the one who said at our wedding, "You can't just take her to Hawaii for your honeymoon. That would be like going to her own backyard. Why don't you take her on a road trip from our house in California to the house on the river in Missouri? She can see how beautiful and vast our land is in America." Well, it seemed like a good idea at first, but things took a turn for the worse right away. She began to feel sleepy and sick. Later, I would find out she had a case of the mumps. And by the time
Oh.
we rolled down that gravel road to the house on the river in Missouri, she was practically comatose. Well, I still wanted to do this right. I scooped her up out of the passenger seat with the intention of carrying her across the threshold. But when I reached for the knob, turned it, and opened the door, out poured water. Thousands of gallons of river water. And there were still thousands of gallons still trapped inside the house. Well, I put my comatose bride back in the car and rolled up my pant legs and waded into that first story room to see about draining this house. But then I stopped. From further inside that room, I heard a splash. And through the gloom, I caught the luminous glow of white foam on the crest of a wake being made by something as it swam in slow circles in the back of the house. Something big was swimming in the water in the back room. Instinctively, I backed out. And then I did the only thing I could think of to do, which was to go to the only place of business for miles. It was a bar owned by a former Marine. His name was Booby. Oh, Booby was glad to see me. I'd known him all my life. Why, he was sorry he hadn't made it out to the wedding. It was just too far. Booby, I said, and he said, what? I said, there's water in my house. Oh, buddy, he said, that must have been from the big rain we had in April. I should have gone down and looked at your property. And Booby, I said, and he said, what? There's something in the water in my house. And he looked at me and he said, what do you suppose it is? And I'll be darned if right behind his head weren't this picture. And in the picture was Booby, and hanging from his arms was an enormous prehistoric paddlefish, the kind that still swim the green rivers of the Ozark Hills. Well, I don't even think I said the word paddlefish when his hand went to the till of his register and he pulled out his big black commando knife. You see, he had purportedly caught that fish with his bare hands and killed it with his commando knife. He gave me a look and he said, well, I suppose I better go take a look. Now, this next scene is like right out of a horror movie. There we were in Booby's white pickup truck. There was me and Booby was driving, and wedged between us was my bride. We parked the car and left my bride in the car to rest. And armed with a net and a flashlight, we went in through the top story and followed the stairs right down into the water. And sure enough, in the beams of our lights, there was that thing still swimming in slow circles, churning up the mud from the floor. I held one end of the net, Booby the other. He went that way and I went this way, and we stretched that net between us. And at first it looked like our plan was going to work. That thing turned and started going right into the middle of our net. Now, I've only screamed twice in my life. The first time was when I was in the jungles of Sumatra, and I awakened to find a rat the size of a cat chewing on my lower lip. It comes from deep within your core, and it's like you hear yourself doing it. Well, this was the second time. As I put my bare foot down in the mud and the ooze lining that floor, something slithered right over the top of my foot, which meant whatever this was, it was a heck of a lot bigger than either one of us imagined. Why, it had to be 25, 30 feet long. I screamed, and the force of my scream caused me to lose my footing, and I went down in the water with the thing. I rolled over onto my knees and I raked that muddy water from my eyes so I'd be prepared to deal with whatever was happening. And three things was happening. The first was the thing. It began to rise up out of the water. a log of flesh, slick and striped like the body of a snake, but swollen and bloated as if from some mysterious expansion within. And a howling noise filled the room. Whee! The second thing was my bride. She must have awakened in the truck and wondered what we were doing. And she came tottering down those stairs. And I think the situation was a bit overwhelming to her in her fevered state. She just sort of crumpled and fell into the water. And I surged through that muddy water to go and assist her. The third thing was Booby. First, I didn't even know where he was. Then I caught him in the beam of my flashlight. Why, he was up on top of my grandmother's pie safe in this crouched position that only a Marine can do. And in his hands, he held that long black commando knife. And then he leapt from the top of that pie safe and he was over the thing and then down on it. And he took that knife and he pushed it in and gave it a twist. Bam! Explosion! A gritty mist filled the room. Now, there's two pictures in Booby's bar. In the first, there's Booby holding that paddlefish I told you about. He had purportedly caught with his bare hands and killed with his black commando knife. Well, in the second, there's me and Booby, and wedged between us is my new bride, and draped from our arms is what Booby will tell you. It's the second paddlefish he caught and killed with his bare hands. I tell you though, the beard on every farmer in that bar will begin to bounce up and down. Every farmer in that bar knows that ain't no paddlefish hanging from our hands. Why, that's nothing other than a common household vacuum cleaner. It had been left plugged in, and when the level of the water came up, I think something must have floated past it and bumped the switch on. Why, it had been going in circles for God knows how long, sucking in muddy water, spitting it out. I don't know how we weren't electrocuted. It had been the cord that had gone over the top of my foot. Well, I still owed my wife a honeymoon. And after a year, I saved up all my money. And we finally went to where, in fact, she had always wanted to go all her life.
Hawaii.
And that was Hawaii. Well, thank you very much.
Oh, wow.
Oh, it's been a long time since I've told that.
That was great.
Oh, that was a treat. Better than ever.
Uh,
So Brandon, that was 9.5 minutes.
that's perfect. Thank you. I'm glad.
You are a great storyteller. I've loved both of your stories. I'm
I
so
think that
impressed.
story gets better every year.
Agreed.
Well, we have time for our final story. We have more than 7.5 minutes, Genevieve. So
Okay.
you
So-
are on.
Can you-
Can I just ask people, can you mute yourselves because some of us aren't muted and it's a bit of a distraction. Thank you.
Can you spotlight? Can you give me permission to record and can you spotlight me? I don't hear you, but I'm sure that
You
that's
are spotlighted. And to give you permission to record, I wonder, have you requested it?
I did, and it says, please ask the host to give you permission to record.
Okay. Let's see, I don't know if maybe I can just make you a
Host.
host.
Okay.
Let's see if I can do this.
I'm trying to learn all this stuff myself.
Okay.
Last time, Vicky's face was on last time we were on a different story swap. Vicky's face came on while I was telling my story. Okay, let's see.
You are a co-host now.
Oh, but it's not telling me to record.
I wonder if it's because
Spotlighted. You look spotlighted. You just don't know it.
No, I know I'm spotlighted, but I wanted to record it so that I could get the recording individual from the whole thing. It's okay. All right, let's just go. Usually I have to push a little button. Let me see. Oh, good. It says, okay, never mind. When I was just a little girl, my mother used to sing a song that as the years unfurled, sweet memories still brings. Que será, será, whatever will be, will be. When I was somewhere between high school and college, I went back to my town of my birth, Guadalajara, where my mother taught for the University of Arizona summer program. I was able to take courses in Spanish literature, but my favorite course was in Mexican folk dances. I was in one section and there was another section. My teacher was the Mexican equivalent of Dolly Parton, except with black hair, the thick eyelashes, the red lipstick, the manicured hands. She was buxom and bottomsome, and she wore tight dresses and bare legs on dancing shoes with straps. The teacher of the other group was very simple. She was older, she had gray hair. She just had it tied back, wore a simple blouse with a long, slightly gathered skirt. Didn't have time for all that nonsense, but she oozed an incredible sensuality that was really the envy of my teacher. The other thing she did was that her group got muchachos that she would hire from town to come and dance with the girls. So they all had partners. And although we had men and women in our group, young men and women, there weren't as many as men as there were women. So we generally just danced with ourselves. And we'd look at the other group that was dancing a dance called La Culebra, the snake. And let me tell you, there was nothing subtle about what that snake represented. Oh my God, the snake is gonna get you. And the young men would go around and take off their sombreros and they'd slap the ground as if they were trying to kill the snake, but they were actually just trying to get closer to the girls. And although I didn't ever envision myself going out with any of those chavos, I certainly would not have minded having one next to me, slapping his sombrero on the asphalt, getting very close to my strappy little dancing shoes. At any rate, I also took from my Dolly Parton Mexican counterpart private lessons because I wanted to learn some of the more intricate dances of the folkloric repertoire, especially La Bamba from Yucatan. And I learned it. La Bamba that had been made popular here in the United States by Richie Valens. When he did a more rocky type version of it, it took the country by storm. It raised him to stardom. And as he was at the peak of his burgeoning career, he, Buddy Holly, and the Big Bopper were killed in an airplane accident on the night that is said to be the night the music died. But the music didn't die. And I returned to this country ready to sign up for university when I saw in the university magazine that someone had put a little ad saying, looking for students who are willing to join a Mexican folkloric dance troupe just beginning. So I showed up in the auditorium and they were eager and excited, but they didn't know what they were doing. I knew very little more than they did, but they say in the land of the blind, the one-eyed man rules. So I said, hey, I've got a bunch of dances that we can learn together, and we did. I also had a suitcase full of costumes that we could copy so that all of us could eventually see ourselves doing a performance. Well, I taught them the dances, but they taught me so much more. They taught me about the Chicano culture. I was born in Mexico, raised in the United States, but my mother was a purist and she didn't like this bit about Chicanos. You're either Mexican or you're American or you're both, but what's this with Chicanos? It's not right. Well, let me tell you, there was everything right about them. They were warm, they were loving, they were close, they were easygoing, and they knew how to party. We would get together, and besides all the camaraderie, we had wonderful food, and all the mothers, of course, would pitch in. And back then, the drinking age in Texas had been lowered to 18 because this was the time of the Vietnam War. And by golly, if you could carry a gun and you could kill a man, you certainly could drink beer. So we had lovely times. We didn't drink too much beer, just enough to enjoy the salsa. And we would listen to the wonderful music of the times. We would listen to Chicago's Does Anybody Really Know What Time It Is? And we would listen to Santana's Oye Como Va, El Ritmo. And we would listen to Stevie Wonder, You Are the Sunshine of My Life. That's why I'll always be around. You are the apple of my eye. Forever you'll stay in my heart. A lot of the kids, young adults, were coupled up. A few of us weren't. I remember with a lot of sweet affection, one young man, we'll call him Marcelo, who was a little overweight, had the most sweet smile, dancing eyes, and was the most gentle, loving person in the world. He was my partner in a polka that we ultimately put together that was a 4-couple polka. And I had a different partner who was one of 2 brothers, but a very, very good dancer with whom I would dance La Bamba. So we practiced and practiced and got so good that we were able to put on a performance at the brand new student union in front of a lot of fellow students with all of our costumes. The first half went very well. A couple of dances in the second half went well. And I hurried to the back to change into my costume for La Bamba because it's very elaborate. You wear fake braids, I had to then, and ribbons and flowers and baubles and gold chains and long dangly earrings and an apron that my mother had painted with oil paints, beautiful flowers, and a fan hanging down also from a necklace, and strappy dancing shoes. So it took a long time to get this outfit together, and I felt very proud because I was ahead of the game and I was ready to go. When I looked around, I thought, where are the rest of the kids? Well, I looked at the back of the curtain and I realized that I had dressed too soon. It was time to dance the 4-couple polka, and I was one of the couples. And there was absolutely no time for me to change out of La Bamba dress with all its white meters and meters of soft fabric into what should have been a little tassely vest and sassy boots and tassely skirt and bandana. Absolutely no way. So I had to sit it out. And so did Marcelo, who was my partner there. They did a good job of dancing a 3-legged stool version of what should have been a 4-legged table. And Marcelo was very gracious. Don't worry about it, Jenny. That's okay. It's okay. It's okay. Okay. And then I heard the beginning strains of La Bamba. And off we went. I went with the brother Roberto, who was such a good dancer, and we danced our hearts out, so much that nobody ever knew that anything had gone awry. This dance requires me to unfurl the long waistband of my partner. We unfurl it, we place it on the floor, and then with a delicate, intricate movement of our feet, we form it into the shape of a bow and actually tie it on the floor only with our feet. And at the end of La Bamba, we lift it up, each one with one loop on his boots and one loop on my strappy little shoes. And we lift it up together and we hold it as a symbol of our love. Bamba, 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 bamba. It was fabulous. We were so happy. Time passed, we graduated. We went off in our own directions. I moved to San Francisco. Hadn't heard from Marcelo in a long time. Roberto had gotten coupled up and eventually married another of the girls in the group. One day I was in an office and I got a call. It was Marcelo. He said, you know, Jen, I'm actually teaching not too far and I'm going to have to come up to San Francisco. Can I visit you? Claro, Marcelo, I said, of course, I'd love to. And he showed up in my office, which was on the 32nd floor of some building, with a bouquet of roses. And we chatted, we had lunch, and then he walked me back to my office and he said, I have something for you. And it was Stevie Wonder's album, which had You Are the Sunshine of My Life. Que será, será. What will be, will be. I didn't see him again. I went on one path and he went on his path. And it is really my responsibility because part of my path was basically disconnecting from the people I had known for a number of years. I'm surprised that I didn't get his message. But I met the love of my life. And but for that fact, who knows what might have happened. But as I look back, this song reminded me of how things that might have been that didn't come to pass still enrich our lives and fill our hearts in these later years of our lives. Who knows what might have happened? But it warms my heart to think that on that day, when he brought me roses and brought me an album, this is what he was thinking. I feel like this is the beginning, though I've loved you for a million years. Que será, será.
Thank you very much. I'm going to bring up our tellers. There's Beverly and of course, Beth. And Sharon. And Katie. And Vicky. Elaine. And who am I missing? Anybody?
You.
Oh, right, just me. Right, I was counting and I forgot. Thank you. Well, what a beautiful evening of stories we have had. And it'll be a month unless we see each other on March 12 at the SAC event. I hope to see some of you there. I will certainly be there taking notes because I am the SAC secretary. So if you say things, I will write them down dutifully. And I just want to thank all of our tellers, but also all of our people who come and listen. What better way to honor one another than to listen to each other's stories, right? Yeah. And once again, I just want to say what an honor it is to be your MC. A big thank you to Katie and Meg for organizing the Do Tell Swap every month. And of course, always to Elaine for having founded it to begin with. Thank you all, and I'll see you in a month, I hope. All right. Good night.
Thank you all. Be well.
Thank you all.
Bye.
Thank you all.